What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to what's this show called? Yakking about nothing. I almost said yakking with Yukon.
Well,
It's
your
just old
Yukon,
habit,
your
man.
Yakin, that's
It's
at least
habit.
half right.
It's habit. It's the show about nothing. It's the
Yeah.
podcast. I was gonna we were gonna use the podcast about nothing, but somebody already stole that. Did I tell you that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. Yeah. So
They must be Seinfeld fans as well. And so
I don't know if they are, but if they are, congratulations to them for getting it before we did.
yeah. Yeah, they got a good one there. They struck gold, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, they did. They did. So, all right. Well, we're back. We've been off for a couple of weeks. It's mostly Dan's fault because he's been working two jobs, and he's getting his little ass kicked. So, three jobs. What three?
I'm making products still.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I forget Chase, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I
Ah,
won't complain about. Well, I have
I don't have
kids.
kids
I
or a
have
wife.
kids. Right. I have kids. You don't. So that
Yeah.
makes up for the two jobs. So
Yeah.
believe
I'm not like that
believe
lonely
me.
cat lady. I'm like that lonely pumpkin man that makes pumpkins.
Lonely
It's
pumpkin
whatever.
man. Hey, you know what? You got to do what you got to do. So,
Yeah. Okay.
so yeah, it's Dan's fault. But
Yep.
tonight we're going to talk about something. This kind of goes back into what we talked about slightly, and this isn't going to be the whole show. I don't want this to be the whole show, but it does. It is something that Dan and I know a little bit about, and I think, in our older age, we've gotten a lot more in tune with these kind of things. And you guys probably all know that piece of crap Terrifier is out, and it's like the number one uh, box office, whatever you want to call it, box office movie. And it's been so they're doing something that so when I put on the thing, is it demonic? Well, of course it is. Yes, it is. But we're not here to just trash it because Dan and I have done stuff like this in the past. Is that right, Dan? Why don't you explain more? This will
Well,
go back
yeah,
into a last episode a little bit, but that's all right.
I think with nowadays, man, people automatically assume it's like, oh, they're just these self-righteous Christians. They're just going to trash everything, and they're
Yeah.
so good. It's like, well, that's the assumption. I even some of the comments that were left already, or like
Yeah.
on Facebook, where people assume that, and I think that's fair to a certain extent because that does happen a lot.
Mhm.
Christians are more, and not all, but a lot are more inclined to tell you what they're against as opposed to what they're for, which I actually do think is a problem. I will be honest. I think you need a balance, but the gospel itself is hope and good, and
All right.
it, you know. So I think we have to tread lightly with like, waving our finger at everybody because we're no. I've said this before. We're not on a soapbox. We're not above anybody, including the writer and director of movies like this. It's um, we don't want to pretend to know anyone's heart or why they're doing what they're doing. Uh, it would be easy to go in here and say, "Oh, these Terrifier movies or horror movies or whatever movies, right, are just this is horrible. This is just the bottom of the barrel." But here's the thing. I mean, I have, I should say, we've tried to make a couple of short films many years ago where they were horror based
Mhm.
because I was really into horror films that were bloody and gory and violent, and then we made our haunted house, which was just a drop in a nuclear bomb of shock and awe on people.
Mhm.
Which some of the scenes on haunted house I would say almost live up to like a Terrifier kind of
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
brutality.
There was,
Because
yeah.
but I think what has to kind of be thought of, and we can never know with someone that makes a movie like Terrifier or any other movie unless you know the person themselves. We where I can stop and think like, okay, where was I at as a person? I was 26. I can't speak for you. Uh, I was a Christian at the time, still am. I mean, not in comparison to now. I thought I was, I guess. But why was I doing what I was doing? So I guess what I mean by it is I try not to just look at things and say, oh my gosh, that's bad or I'm offended. It's like I do stop and ask why,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So why was I even having the ideas for our haunted house in 2010 specifically that I was? Why was I like, oh, bloody, gory, scenes of torture, a dead woman in a bathtub and bloody water and then like a room that had blood all over the walls that implied like domestic violence and like all these really, really dark things. Well, there was anger in my personal life,
Mm-hmm.
and that came out. But I was also trying to make a statement, not that anyone cared, but is a shock and awe.
Yeah.
It's to just try to get people riled up because I'm in pain personally a little bit, so I'm going to make my customers feel my pain, which is not a good mentality. But that's what it was. That's just keeping it real. So it's hard for me to sit and like, oh, this guy that made Terrifier or this horror movie, that horror movie. It's hard to be like, oh, what a horrible person when it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, no. I mean, you
So
got a good point. You got a good point because the title of this show will. I mean, it already stirred up a couple of things, but regardless of that, um, yeah, I look at it. I mean, I look at it a completely different light now than I did back then. I'm with you where you know we talked about this last episode. We were both going through things. We were both going through personal things, and we took kind of that rage and that anger, and we like, okay, well, we're going to put it onto the public. So, you
exactly.
know, but I think the thing is, since I've gotten older, I'm a lot more conscientious of what I'm intaking myself.
Right.
Because I don't want to, I personally don't want to intake things like this because I've always had this thing, like even watching movies, be like, well, that still was a person, that kind of thing. And it's like
Yeah.
when you get desensitized, more things creep in. Satan loves it when you get desensitized because then he can strike you harder and harder. You've seen that with society nowadays. Well,
Yeah.
what is okay now was a huge deal 20, 30 years ago. And I'm not going to go down that list because, I'm not going to start that. But there's so many things now that were taboo back then that are socially accepted. I'm not going to say they're godly accepted, but they're socially accepted. So, with this guy, I think what he's trying to do, he's trying to basically, he doesn't really need a name, make a name for himself. But when you hear about these things, Dan will love this because they claim they did this with the last one that this person fainted or this person threw up during the movie and they're handing out barf bags as you walk into the theater and
It's a gimmick.
it's a gimmick,
That's
right? It's
part
a
of the
gimmick,
entire thing. It's a
right?
gimmick. It's all done
Right?
with intent, and
Right?
that's why. And your points are completely valid, and I agree. But that's why, for me, it's like I don't take it too seriously because it's like I know what they're doing because we've done it.
Mhm. Yeah,
We were so high on like bragging about the reviews that we got for Haunted House about how
yeah.
it's so intense, it's so gory, it's so crazy, it's
Mhm.
insane, it's or even in 2011 when Rex and the Beast, the reviewers came through and they said
Yeah.
this is one whacked Haunted House, like what's wrong with these people, kind of thing. We thought that was the funniest thing in the world,
Even
and
though
the
he probably
fact,
meant it.
well, yeah, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like so I understand what these guys are doing too, and they're just doing it on a broader, probably more well, most likely a more intense scale,
Oh
a
yeah.
more
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, a darker scale. I'd say it's more than what we did, but the idea is the same. They're dude. I was talking to mom and dad about this earlier. They're sitting at home just like this is hilarious. They're just laughing it up. That's my guess. I could be wrong, but they're just trying to see what they can get away with in life,
Yeah.
like a teenager.
Yeah.
You know what
No,
I mean?
you're right. You're right.
And the general public, a lot of them are in on the joke. They know what they're doing, and they want to be like, oh, I know it's gonna like mess me up. I know I might barf, but I want to see if I can do it, or
Mhm. Mhm.
it's all like a big joke to me. But here's the thing though. It's like Apostle Paul says, paraphrasing. He's like, I can do anything, but not everything I do is beneficial.
Right.
So
Right.
I can watch this movie, okay, this movie, that movie. But is that going to help me? Is that going to benefit me? It's like, okay, most people don't go into watching a movie be like, oh, to get something good out of it per se. It's entertainment. But I find nowadays that most movies is like, that's not going to do anything for me. That's just because there's
Right.
usually an agenda or there's sexual garbage or there's crazy violence. It's like, that doesn't do anything for me. I just turn away from it. But and
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
me. But that certainly doesn't condone some of the content, just like it wouldn't condone our own content. Um, I think if you know, I don't think there's any point to what they're doing, these people, but I also know there's nothing I can do about it other than just
No, well, the best thing you can
I
do
guess I
about it
just won't
is
watch it. You know,
just not watch it. Yeah, I
yeah,
just, like I said before, I'm careful about what I let in because
right.
if you
And you
start
have to
letting
be.
in too much
Yeah,
stuff like that, you're gonna start you to get desensitized, and you don't
yeah.
want that. And I'm not into going and watching a bunch of people being murdered for 2 hours. That's just not
No,
my, you
no,
know, not my thing.
right.
So we're not trying to be like high on our horse here. We're just saying we've done this, and that was kind of my thinking when I thought of the idea for the show was like, we're not out here to just like smoke anybody that's saying and say you shouldn't be doing this, blah blah blah. Hey, you want to
Right.
go see it. But just I think what I would say is just be careful what you let in, be careful how you react to it. Don't get desensitized to it. I
Yeah,
understand it's a movie, but there's been a lot of movies, and Satan has a way of playing through all kinds of media too. Now, this is
yeah.
not just movies. We'll branch on this a little further, Dan, because music's a huge thing right now, where there's demonic elements in music like crazy. That's all over the place. And then there's a lot when it comes to TV shows. I can't let my kids watch any TV unless it's been monitored or it's a Christian station or it's anything like that because it's so out of control now that that's another thing that has to be watched. So um do you feel that way too with like music and with like TV? Do you think it's becoming a thing where it's almost out of control and you really need to watch yourself on it?
Oh, totally. I would make 2 points. Number one would be a point. I was discussing this with mom earlier was, and she had a really fantastic point. So take TV, right? Okay, let's compare. Say you have a movie like Terrifier. Okay, we can say, oh, that's horrible for this reason. But what about on TV, like on these Disney shows, where there's intent with subliminal messaging marketed towards children
Hmm.
to mess with their minds? What's actually worse? I'll take Terrifier all day long, personally, over that. They're trying to warp your child's mind with subliminal messaging about things that say maybe you as a parent or Christian parent or even non-Christian parent don't want your kids having any involvement in.
Hmm.
That is with intent and a young, weak mind. People seeing Terrifier are adults, they're teenagers. They know they're making that decision. But when you have things like Disney
Yeah.
where they're
Yeah.
sneaking things in there, which on something that is geared towards a young, growing mind, like a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old. Kids aren't stupid. They may not understand it at the time, but they're Disney and other things like that. They're seed planners. Something like Terrifier, it's like ultra violent. It's ridiculous. That's not going to make me go out and kill somebody. It's certainly not. Now, can this subliminal messaging through things like Disney over many years cause just a little bit of doubt or confusion in a child? Sure.
Oh yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to be. That's where discernment and understanding is. Especially as Christians, we can't just put that big stamp. Boom, terrible. Boom, terrible. We have to really stop and evaluate these things and be like, okay, I'm not saying either's good here, but we know what we're getting with a Terrifier movie. On the other hand, we have our kids watching these innocent little cartoons, but
Hmm.
they're not so innocent. I mean,
Hmm.
Disney for years has put subliminal messaging in their movies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All of Lion King, you name it. There's all sorts of stuff. Aladdin, you name it. And
Yep.
if anyone wants to go down that rabbit hole, feel free. I don't necessarily recommend it.
I
Um,
mean, the thing with that is too, Star Wars just came out with the first, transgender stormtrooper, whatever the hell it was. And it's like, why? Why?
well, right,
And then you're gonna
right,
get your whole, well, what's wrong with that? Well, there is something wrong with that because what you're doing is you're pushing an agenda, you're pushing, and again, like you said, subliminal messaging. Well, it's a Star Wars character, so that kind of thing. And I'm with you. I think that is the one thing that I monitor the most as a parent is okay, you know, I can't let my kids we my me and my wife will take my kids to see a movie, right? But we always go to something my wife actually used to work on. Um it's a Christian organization through Focus on the Family, and they'll give you the actual rundown of the movie on a biblical sense, as opposed to a typical critic's like, oh, it's good for this, it's good for that. Well, one critic might think that subliminal messaging telling your kid to be whatever might be okay. So you can't really trust that. You have to go and you look up the Christian organization and say, okay, this movie has this area or has not this area, and then you can make the determination a lot better. So they really go into a lot more depth when it comes to what you're looking for in terms of your values, your morals, and that sort of thing. So I would say that if you ever question that stuff, I with Disney, I think we all kind of know where Disney stands.
Well,
I don't think
right.
that's
I
any
mean,
big surprise right now.
well, yeah. I
So
mean, it's a big propaganda outlet, and again, like if you look at a lot of, not all certainly, but if you go even back to the 70s and 80s with like horror films, because I've been a huge horror buff a good chunk of my life, not so much anymore. I still have appreciation for certain ones, but a lot of them are just goofy. Like there's no message, there's no good or bad. It's just you know what you're getting. It's
mhm,
just a waste of 2 hours, but you know that going in. It's just you know, and
yeah,
so that's you can view that however you want. But when there's like an agenda or some sort of thing being pushed within that, and you said music, that's another big thing in music. And my music library is, whoo, it's tiny.
yeah,
What I realized is back in the day, I would listen to a lot of heavy metal. Like I would even listen to things like Slipknot and um, Metallica was never an issue, and I still listen to Metallica. But I listened to a lot of negative Five Finger Death Punch, a lot of negative metal, and you get into a song for a reason. You're singing these lyrics, but you don't even really know
mhm.
what you're singing
Oh yeah,
unless you
oh
stop
yeah,
and you're like, what am I singing? Then you read them, and it's like everything is just so negative. Not everything, but a lot of it is just so negative, and it's like it does make you angry. So I'm not saying all of that stuff is horrible or anything, but if you're angry a lot and you listen to a lot of angry music, that's probably
oh yeah.
not
No,
helping. So it's
absolutely,
like you do have,
absolutely.
like you said earlier, you have to have an awareness of what you are putting your eyes on and putting in your ears. That's biblical for sure. Um, you know, and like the main metal I listen to now is like true Christian metal, like impending doom, things like that. The most brutal sounding music, and people have called that demonic. But it's like Brooke Reeves, the lead
You gotta,
singer, is like one of the strongest Christian
you gotta
guys, and
look at the lyrics. Yeah,
yeah, but his lyrics are brutal too. He keeps it very real, with
right.
like heaven and hell and all these things. But we need to just, I think what people have to do is stop and think of what they're listening to, what they're watching, and be like, is this beneficial? Is it this? Is it that? I
Yeah,
mean, it's easy to just fall in and be like, especially with heavy metal back in the day, to just like, oh, it's the heavier the metal, the better, and all this and that. And like sometimes that's true, but man, there's a lot of horrible lyrics out there. And rap, oh my gosh, I don't listen to rap, but dang. But there's another side to this coin too, which is weird because like in the 80s, there was like this ordeal going on called the Satanic Panic, where it's like, especially within music, like that's satanic, that's satanic, that's satanic, everything's satanic. Like I'll give you an example. Like so back in the day, they would say, oh, if an album cover of an artist has a checkerboard, oh, that's satanic. Or if it has the color red, or oh, that belongs
right,
to Saint and all this.
right.
That is Christian paranoia. That is like you're giving the devil more space than he has, or you're giving him ownership to a checkerboard or the color red or this or that. He doesn't own anything.
Right.
We're propping him up and be like, oh, this is this. Like, I mean, have some discernment for Pete's sake. Like if you
It's
think that the
true.
devil owns a checkerboard, like they accuse like Michael Jackson, for example, like, oh, he has a checkerboard on one of his albums or this or that. And it's like now we're just fishing for
Well, that's what it
problems.
turns
And
into. Yeah,
so yeah, it's a fine balance.
yeah,
And I think that people want to get like, especially newer Christians, they'll like, oh my gosh, well that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. It's like, well, yeah, the world is wrong. Like
right,
you're
right. I
in
mean,
this fallen place. Like what becomes it's kind of like what you said, like it can toy collecting be an idol? Yes, it can, but can also seeking out offense and sin and finding everything wrong become an idol? It's like, oh wait, oh yeah, Jesus, don't worry, I'll turn back to you, don't worry, but I'm finding all this fault. Like anything could be an
Right.
idol, and you're just gonna wear yourself
Anything,
out. It's
anything can be an idol. Right.
yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
that's not to say you don't call things out, but man, it can consume you very
Absolutely.
quickly.
Absolutely.
So it's
Sky Walker, what's up? And what's up, Rex? Good to see you, man. Rex is doing a good job with his interviews. I can't remember who he had, but he had a guy that, well, Rex, you're gonna have to correct me, but he's doing some interview processes. He got some real big guy that works on a lot of the Lucasfilm props and stuff, and
oh
man, he does
wow,
a great job. So Rex, you're the man, dude.
that's
You're the
impressive.
man,
Great
buddy.
job.
Yeah,
That's
good
cool.
stuff, man. I want to go back to what you said about music, though. So the funny thing is the subliminal messaging in music is like a real thing. I
Yeah.
remember catching myself really listening and really, singing along to, I'll use Metallica, God That Failed, Leper Messiah. You get these very anti-God songs because Metallica is not known. Metallica does have anti-God songs. They really
Well,
do. You know.
well, one sec with that though. Leper Messiah is actually not really an anti-God song. What it is they're talking about the people that will manipulate people of faith and trick them into like giving them money.
Oh, okay.
Like when he says, "Give me money, give me green. The more you give, the better. The more you give, heaven you will meet. The more you give, the better seat you'll get," or however it goes.
Oh, right,
That's
right, right,
actually what they're
right.
talking about. And the God that failed, I will agree. That's because James was talking about. I think because they
Well,
were raised in Christian Science,
yeah, and
where
he had like a falling away, and yeah,
right. And the reason that I still am cool with Metallica and stuff is because James has come around. Like I've watched extensive interviews, especially lately, where he's talking about he's come back to God and like all this and that. So you know, I understand how he feels, and a lot of musicians do just go off of how they feel at the moment. That's what they write.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but sorry to your
No,
point.
no, but what I'm saying is that, you like how a song sounds, right? Like
Right. The
there's
beat.
also there's also like Disturbed has a song called Liberate. Liberate, and it's basically talking about how he's still waiting for the Messiah. He's still waiting for, because David Draymond's Jewish, so he does not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. So
Yeah.
he's still waiting for the Messiah. But it took me a long time of listening to that song and really slowing it down to be like, dude, I totally disagree with you on this. I'm not listening to this crap anymore. So
Yeah.
I think that's the problem though. You like the tune of a sound of a what am I trying to say? The sound
Down
of
to
a
the tune.
song, the sound of a song, and it gets in your mind. And then
Yeah.
you
Oh,
start replaying it in your head. And I'll catch myself singing a song every now. Mostly, I listen to a lot of Christian music now, so it's mostly that. But I've done that for a reason because I would rather listen to that. But I'll admit I go to softball and I want to get myself worked up because I want to kick some butt at softball. I'll listen to some metal. I'll listen to
down with the
some
sickness or
Volbeat.
something.
I'll listen to Down with Sickness, and it's like, wait a sec, I'm listening to this crap, and I'm like, is this really what I want going in here? I think
Right.
that's kind of where the whole thing all comes together. Is they're not. There's always been a lot of artists and moviegoers who have really been accused of trying to push something on you without actually saying that they're pushing it on you.
That's
You
how a lot
know,
of them get their record deals.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Exactly. That's how they get it.
one thing that I've heard, and again, if it's true or not, I imagine it is true. But there's a lot of record labels that say like you get the deal, you get the contract or whatever, will
Mhm.
sign you, but you cannot use the the name Jesus. You cannot do that.
Right. Right. Well,
And
that's kind of everywhere.
but
Yeah.
but then when
Yeah.
what you have, let's take Creed for example, because they just finished up a new tour. I actually admire Scott Stapp a lot. Um, but if you go and listen to off their first album, My Own Prison, the song My Own Prison is, in my opinion, maybe one of the top 5 greatest Christian songs ever written. Go and read the lyrics.
Mhm. Yep.
He tap
Yep.
dances around saying the name of Jesus. He says, "A lion roaring in the darkness, only he holds the key."
Yep.
Uh, he talks about the light.
Right.
You know, should have been banging his head on a Sunday morning, meaning going to church.
Yep.
He
Yep.
has all these phenomenal lyrics in there where and it's all biblical. He goes in there and he's able to tiptoe around that. And I was like, you know, and then he says, you know, see a vision of a cross, like
Yep.
all in that
Yep.
same song.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, that's cool when guys are like, you know what, okay, but I'm gonna still get
Yeah.
this in there.
Yeah.
I mean, so
I
I don't
think
know
one
this.
problem I do have with them, though, one thing that I do have a problem with that, they will never label themselves as a Christian rock band. They kind of
Well, that
refuse
was
to do
back in the
that.
day. You're right. Yeah,
Do
like
they do
he.
it now? Because I mean, I haven't listened to them in a while, so
Oh
um,
yeah, Scott Stapp actually. He was controversial a few weeks ago because he was on stage before they started, and he was talking about like America, how you know we are rooted in the Bible, and the founders were biblical, and we're a republic. Yeah, he went off. It was pretty
oh,
awesome.
good.
So
Well, you got to give that
he's
guy a lot of
come
credit
along.
because he
Well,
admitted that he was totally wrong and he was basically the cancer of the group, and it took forever. You know, took all
well,
those other guys forgiveness to go back
yeah,
to the
yeah.
guy who was really the pain in the ass of the
Right.
group.
And but think of what we're saying though, because what you just said is like, look at us with On House. Like those guys were in their early 20s and they were saying and doing crazy stuff. We were in our mid 20s, late 20s. We were doing crazy stuff. You know, and over time you think, oh, this stuff is so great. This is cool. This is whatever. This is shocking. This is that. Then you get later in life, you're like, yeah, that's pretty stupid.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
So
Yeah, yeah,
that's why it's
yeah.
like, you
There's
know, I mean,
there's times I think back to it, and my kids will ask me. They'll say, you know, they, my son, I want to do scary things. I'll scare you, boy. And then I'm like, I'm like, wait a sec, wait, we don't want to do that to him. But the thing is, like, I could not see myself doing that stuff now. Being a father and knowing what I know, I just couldn't see myself doing. If there was a little 7-year-old boy or a little 9-year-old girl in a haunted house line, I would automatically go to my kids and be like, "Oh, I can't scare you. There's no, I can't do that." So you're
until the
absolutely
kid
right.
piped up and said, "You're not scary."
Well, then he's dead, but
Yeah, then you let him have it.
yeah.
I get a
So
fair share of that. You know.
let's get
You're
to
not scary.
Rex's comment. Nick, he's in the industry right now. Roger Christian, he did about everything and for stars. Oh, dude, yes, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, great job on that, man. Great job on that.
That's amazing.
Shannon, hi, how you doing? Good. Thanks for joining us. This is basically just us BSing, so I hope
You know
you're
what
enjoying
though,
it.
but I think this is actually really beneficial because it's easy, no matter what your beliefs are, side you're on, to just say, point at something and say, "Oh, that's bad," or
Yeah,
"Oh, that's good."
yeah,
I think that's actually the problem is, okay, we know certain things are obviously just black and white, bad or good, but sometimes you seeking out discernment and really listening and evaluating things, man, that I have found out that it's so important. It's like saying, well, this guy's a jerk. Well, that's easy, but why is he a jerk? You know what I mean? Like maybe that guy has something really bad in his life, and that's not excusing his acting how he is, but maybe that guy actually needs some help. Maybe
yeah.
he has these deep rooted issues. You know what I mean? Like I think it's rush to that judgment and rush to condemn,
Right.
because you know a lot of people that want to just say, "Oh, Christians walk around condemning." It's like no, there's plenty of people of all walks of life that condemn other people daily, whether we want to admit it or not. So
True, true. And the one thing it's like we talked about before, the one thing we don't want to do is exactly what you said, because then, like I've always told you and you've always told me, the best thing to do, kind of like what we did a couple episodes ago when we have questions about, God and religion or whatever it is, the first thing I want to do is not be like really judgmental at them, because that's the first turnoff. We don't really want to do what the other side does. The other side right then and there, if you're talking to someone who's super hardcore satanic and you're wanting to talk to them about God and they judge you and they knock you down and bam bam bam, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to tell that person to kiss your ass and you're going to leave. So
that's one of the number one reasons why. And I personally, I think this is a bit silly, but I do understand it. That's the main reason why people walk out away from the Christian faith is Christians.
So it's that, and then it's bad experiences either through a church or someone
Right.
through the church or raised in the
Right.
wrong way through the church where it was too strict. Those are usually seem to be the biggest reasons why. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And for me, okay, it's easy to say, well, that is a bit irrational. Like, but because I've had, I think we all have, I've had some really, really bad experiences with Christian people, and,
Hmm.
and that includes myself. I've had bad
Hmm.
experiences with myself as a Christian person. But I, I have the understanding, just glory to God for it. It's not me that I have the understanding that like that's a person. We all make mistakes. Maybe they were fed a false gospel, this or that, but that's not what God says to do, and they're doing the opposite of what
Right.
He says to do. So
Right.
I'm like, because yeah, I mean, man, woo, I've had some real some real rough experiences inside
Hmm.
churches.
Hmm.
Many times I've been treated better at working at haunted houses than I have within a church building, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a fact.
Yeah.
But I also realize like that's not indicative of haunted house people or of church people. That's individuals. We have to look at
Right.
it as individuals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm sure you have probably had better experiences with some haunted house people than say like the church that we grew up in and some of those people.
well, here's the thing. Actually, you want me to share a brief story
Go for it,
with
man. I
church
don't care.
people?
I don't care. Go for it.
uh,
Because I know what story you're gonna tell. So yeah,
yeah,
do it.
yeah, from late 2021. So we were
Yeah.
raised Catholic, and this is not anti-Catholic or to trash
No.
on Catholics,
No.
but there are religious people. I don't consider myself a religious person at all. People say, well, what do you believe? So I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. That's it.
Right.
Uh, Biblical Christian or try to be biblical Christian. But so our when our grandmother passed in 2021, the Catholic churches he went to that's where her service was held, her funeral, if you will. And I'll just keep it brief. But I did the eulogy and I just kept it biblical. I talked about even some of Grandma's childhood and some of the flaws that she had and how she came to God revealed it to her through like our mom and uncles
Mm-hmm.
about her childhood and why she made some of the mistakes she made. And I kept her as at a human level. Obviously, I lifted her up about how all the good she did, of course. But I made it more talked more about Christ than her. That was
Right.
with intent because I thought that's probably what she would want. you know. Um, but the priest basically threw a temper tantrum and he basically scolded us for not lighting some candles and like um, because a lot of the Catholics believe in like praying for people that are dead, like praying them in heaven, which is not biblically sound. It's
Right.
just not. And so he basically threw a temper tantrum. And then on top of that, a lot of these women that our grandma, did so many things for many years, they literally basically tried to sneak her ashes in to the church, even against our will, and pray over the ashes to get her into heaven, and just completely disrespected the whole
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And they were rude and nasty
Yeah.
and all these things. And I'm telling you what, had I not been the Christian person that I am, and I think I can speak for most of the family, if that was our first introduction to anything Christ or
Oh,
biblical related, we'd be like, oh
out
no,
of there.
freaking way. You're
Forget
gonna
that.
disrespect the whole family at the
Right.
grandma's funeral there.
Right.
And it was horrible. I've never
Yeah.
seen anything like it. And it's like, okay, if that's the impression that people have over, because again, most people that aren't Christians, they don't have that discernment. They just think, oh, religious people. They just kind of
Yeah.
cluster them all together. And I understand that, but it's like if that was your encounter with these religious people,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I'm good over here. I'm not gonna listen to anything you have to say.
And you know
You
what that's
know,
a case of? That's a case of believing in the religion more than believing in God. You believe
correct.
in the religion and you're more in tune to what that religion is stating than believing in God. So to kind of
Correct.
go back to what the whole premise of this conversation was, that's demonic in itself. When you worship a religion over God himself or Jesus Christ himself, not only is that false idolship, but that is also not biblical. You're not giving due to what you need to give due to. You're not you're putting a religion above Jesus, above God, and that right there is setting you up for not a good not a
Correct.
good run.
Yeah.
Not a good
I,
run
I
at
mean,
all.
I would even go further at that because you're spot on. But okay, we started this conversation with like talking about like a movie like Terrifier, a horror movie. Terrifier, okay, we say it's bad. But what you just said, where people twist and these false teachers do and these false religions, they twist the word of God and convince people that they're following Christ truly when they're not. That's Terrifier times 10 million.
Mhm, mhm,
That Terrifier is a drop in an ocean at that point. That's nothing. That's
right.
absolutely nothing. Those people, what you just said, that is the most demonic thing ever because they're the wolves
In sheep's
within the
clothing.
church.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying the Catholic religion as a whole necessarily. I'm
No,
just
that could
saying
be anywhere. That could
Kenneth
be
Copeland
anywhere.
or Jesse Duplantis,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
any of these false teachers, Joyce Meyer, whoever, they're profiting off of leading people away from God when they're claiming to lead them to God, and they're doing it on
Right.
purpose.
And I'll give you
There's
another
nothing more
example.
evil.
I'll give you another example on who's one of the worst at that. And this was actually going to be for another episode, but since we're on the topic, I'll go ahead and say it. Sorry, but it's Catholic again. So I don't have the video. I was, you know what? Hold on. Maybe I do have the video. Hold on.
Oh, the Pope?
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, so what happened, guys, was the Pope was in some meeting, okay, and he was with all other religions. Okay, he was a Muslim, Buddhist. Can't remember what the other ones were. There was several. They were younger people. Okay. The problem with this pope is this pope doesn't want to offend anybody but kind of his own people. So uh, one thing he said, the biggest thing that he said that got a lot of backlash was that they were all going to heaven and they were all the pathway to heaven in their own retrospect. So Islam will get you to heaven. Buddhist will get you to heaven. As long as you're believing in that religion, there's all
Right.
these different paths to heaven. That is beyond the most blasphemous thing you could ever say, especially a religious leader. You know, the number one religion in the world with the top dog, the number one guy. The Pope's the number one guy in the Catholic religion. So, you know, Jesus said, I am the way, I am truth, I am life. He is the only way. The only way you can get to heaven is to the Father is through the Son. What the Pope is saying is exactly what I said before. It's worldly and it's trying to get, you know how I said a little bit ago that things that were taboo back in the 80s are not now?
Mm-hmm.
That would have been super taboo. He probably, if John Paul II had something like that, I'm sure they would have probably expelled him. I'm probably sure they would have kicked him out and said, dude, I mean, you don't know. The 80s were a whole lot different time. Point
the
is,
the
that is just such bad, raw information from a religious leader in the number one religion in the world. It didn't shock me. Did it shock you?
no, no, it well, you quoted it's John 14:6. No, I am the way. Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me."
Mhm.
So the reason that it's so bad that because he's claimed to be Christian. So as a Christian leader, you can't go directly against the Bible itself
That's the
because
thing.
we're not here like
What the
saying
hell?
yeah, we're not sitting here saying Muslims are terrible or this or that. It's just that
Nope.
not everyone can be right, and if we
Nope.
feel we're right, it's not because of us, it's because of God. And so that's just the reality of the situation. Because if you look at Buddhists, and you look at Muslims and Christians and Jewish people, they're very, very different. People say, "Oh, they're all basically the same." No, they're simply
Oh, they're
just not. They're
very,
just
very
not.
different.
There are some similarities, of course, obviously, but Jesus is the only religious figure, if you will, that is still alive, and then he's the only one that paid the price to free us of our sin and made the villain, which is us, to be the good guy. He saved the villain essentially because we sin against him. Obviously, Satan's the ultimate villain. But
Right.
you look at, Muhammad, all these other guys, they're all dead, man. They never
Yeah,
claim.
Buddha's
And,
gone. Yeah, they're
and what's
yeah,
actually really interesting is like within the Quran, I believe, and within these other religions that aren't Jewish or Christian, they all acknowledge Christ in some
Jesus.
capacity,
Yeah,
even if it's
there's
as a prophet or whatever.
yep,
But they all, uh, they're not, maybe not saying he's Messiah, but they still acknowledge him in some
right,
capacity, and he's the only figure to go
right.
across all the lines like that. And so, so that's to differentiate that. But yeah, the Pope. I'm honestly, I'm not shocked at that at all because, again, not to rag on the Catholic Church, but if you start digging into its history, they I don't know if they still do. They used to tell families of uh, people that have deceased that if you pay us certain money, we can pray your dead loved one into heaven.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
obviously,
That's
there's all
true.
this. The
Yeah.
scandals are
Oh yeah,
just endless, and that's not picking on. That's
cardinals.
just the truth.
Hey, that's right. We're not picking on anybody. We're just spreading the truth here. Yep.
Well,
That,
and
these are
and the
things
other
that have
thing is
happened.
this is there's a preacher. His name is Cliff, and him and his son go to all these college campuses. They've been doing it for years, trying to talk to college students
Yep.
about
Cliff
the conversion.
Kidnet. I can't pronounce
Yeah,
his last name.
yeah,
I know exactly
I
who you're
can't
talking
remember.
about.
But he. Oh gosh, I just blanked. Whew. What was I gonna say?
Well, what he does.
Oh, sorry. I know what.
Good.
So I saw a video just to him just the other day. He was talking like, because someone asked him, well, what denomination are you? He's like, well, I guess I'm interdenominational because I'm just Christian. And he started to break it down like, oh, well, you have Protestants, but then you have like, oh, there's like, then there's Catholics, then now you have sects of these Lutherans breaking off from these guys, then you have Presbyterians, then you have Episcopalian, you have all these, and he's like, that's an absolute shame because Christ has said that the body of Christ, meaning his people, his followers, are supposed to be one. It's one body, not, oh, well, yeah, there's an arm to the body, but it's actually detached. It's way over there. And it creates divide amongst themselves
Right.
because of the man-made element, which is the man-made religion, which people often confuse man-made religions with the Bible, which is
Right.
silly because man-made religions have nothing generally to do with the Bible because they're man-made and they're worshiping the man-made part.
Mhm.
And the Christianity is in the basement somewhere.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Religion. That's how religion goes. So, Steve-O, what's up, Steve-O? Good, man. Good to see you, buddy. Hopefully everything's good with him. So he lives in Florida. So hopefully
oh,
you're
hope you're
good.
all right, man. That's
Hopefully the hurricane didn't get you too bad, man. So good to see you, buddy. And Julie says they'd pay indulgences to buy their
yeah,
way to heaven.
yeah. And
Indulgences,
because
yes.
once again, what's it all rooted in? The thing that God says not to root your life in, the root of all evil, the love of money.
Right. Right.
It's always about money, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it goes back to like we're talking about the record labels with the music. It's always about money.
Yeah.
It's always
Well, I think the other concerning thing is too, not only like, so go back to the music real quick, not only the obvious and subliminal
yeah.
and and in your face stuff, but crap, now I forgot what I was gonna say. Damn it. Oh well. I don't
It's an
remember
old
what I was
age.
gonna say. It really is. It's like 9:45 here. I'm insane for even doing this. You're all good, thank God. Yes, man, thank God. I'm glad you're all good, man. I'm
Good to
glad
hear.
you're doing good, doing good, man. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so I would say that there's gonna be demonic elements in everything. You just really need to be aware of where it's at.
Your own sin is demonic.
Right,
You
right.
know,
Your own sin
if
is marked.
it's, I think that's the other point that I think needs to be said is Christians are quick to point out, oh, this is demonic, that's demonic, but hold on, we'll get the finger pointed. Oh, so the
Yes,
Christian guy that says this is
yes,
demonic, just
yes.
yesterday he's online looking at filth. Mum's the word
Right.
on that one. That's less demonic or whatever because it's him
Well,
doing it or
so
you
one
know.
thing that happened with this movie was there was a lot of Christian organizations in front of the church that were protesting it and stuff.
Mhm.
So it kind of goes back to what we're saying, where it's like, okay, yes, I wouldn't see this movie. I know a lot of Christians who wouldn't see this movie. But well, like we said, we are at a point, and this is both sides of the fence. The first reaction is, "Ugh,"
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
instead of something else. Now, does that mean it's okay? No, I don't. I mean, I personally don't think this kind of movie's okay. I didn't think any of the '80s slashers movies were okay. I always felt uneasy watching them, and I think that's for a reason. I think God's telling
Sure.
me, "Don't watch this crap." That's just the way I always was with it. I know you were into it more than I was, and I know it took you forever to get me to even watch Friday the 13th because
Yeah.
I
Well,
was
if
terrified of that stuff when I was a kid, man. Yeah.
no, for sure. I mean, if you look at some of them, certainly not all. I'll use Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, as an
Mhm.
example. It's like, oh, you can say, oh my gosh, this is just a terrible movie. Like Freddy Krueger is like a child killer, right? Like
Yeah.
it's insinuated. It's never like there per se, other than
Johnny
insinuation.
Depp would disagree with you on that.
Well, he's like 18.
I
Okay,
mean,
he's a teen.
hey, he's still a
Killing a
kid, man.
teen is way different. Yeah, yeah, he's a geyser.
Yeah.
But having known a lot about Wes Craven and met him, he was raised Catholic, and then for whatever reason, he went essentially atheist. But if you watch A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's 1984, which I still love much of that movie, including the music. That's the other thing with me with horror movies. I can pick out things that I really like not like, oh, the kills, but like makeup effects, the score, the cinematography, blah blah blah. So that's besides the point. But Wes Craven was raised Catholic, and then I believe he was an atheist. But oddly enough, in that movie, he has like these little hints in there, um, like Nancy, the main character, who is like, she's like the final girl, as they say, like the good guy. The main girl that Freddy is kind of haunting in that movie, like she
Mhm.
has like a crucifix above her
Right.
bed, and then
Right.
there's one scene where it falls off the wall, but she's holding it and she's just kind of looking at it with like endearment, and it kind of is just there in little spots throughout the movie. And I'm not sure what Wes Craven's trying to say, but I noticed it, and it's like, and it was never in a negative manner. So it's like sometimes you have to be able to look into these things a little more. Um, that's not probably 90% of horror movies, but there are things that are there if you're willing to like look for it.
Mhm.
It's not always just throwaway nastiness and violence and it's actually okay. Let's take the movie Saw for example, right?
Garbage.
So,
Garbage.
but is
Hate.
it?
I hate those
But is
movies.
it the first one?
I think it.
Is the first one actually garbage?
Well,
You can from a basic level of just like watching it and not thinking about it, sure. Is it gory and violent? Yes.
yeah.
But the whole underlying storyline is these people are really bad people that are getting putting these actually really bad positions. But it is talking about like there's repercussions for your actions. It's like the main message there is like, the bad things you do hurt other people. And there's like this good undertone to it. Was it done in maybe the best way? No, but it's there.
It's
So,
true. It's true. You,
you
you know
know,
what else there is that kind of has that tone? The Book of Revelation.
well, that's another thing. The Bible's incredibly violent.
Oh, so me and my kids and my wife just got done reading. We just finished the Book of Revelation before bed, before the kids went to bed. Man,
Violent.
Terrifier ain't got nothing on that.
No,
I mean,
no.
woo,
Well,
you know,
actually, it's
I
funny.
would.
It,
Well, so the thing I would say is, a lot of people are afraid. Not only afraid, but they're really afraid to preach on the Book of Revelation. And it's like, man, I really, really wish they would. I really wish more people would acknowledge the Book of Revelation because if you knew half the stuff that goes on in Revelation, you wouldn't be doing half the stuff you're doing because it will scare you straight. And it's like Dan's right. I mean, it will get you. Sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
no, no. It does. But yeah, no. I I forgot where I was actually. Now I'm thinking about that. But yeah, no, I think that it is easy to just do blanket statements too with things like, oh,
Mhm,
this is
mhm.
this or that, or um, now you got me thinking about the Book of Revelations. No, it's intense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Uh, the
yeah.
look in my kids' eyes, they were just I don't know if they fully understood it, but there was points where they're like,
That's the thing.
"Hey,
I don't know if any of us fully understand it. I don't think I really
well,
don't
we
think we
don't
do.
fully understand the grand scope of it, but I mean,
Right.
just by what you read and what you see, I really do wish more people would acknowledge it and would go about it. My wife and I went to a conference that was basically about Revelation, and man, when they go into it and they point out some of the things that are going on in the world now, you're like, oh boy, it's like, hmm,
That's a tough
hmm,
one.
hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I I think that's a tough one because they even in the New Testament they talk about like, oh, we're in the last days, even
Oh, yeah.
2,000 years ago. And I think it's easy to maybe want to apply everything to now because the Bible applies to all times, of course. But it's easy too to say, oh my gosh, this must be right now. But what people have to realize is every generation has thought that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ever since the very first sin, the fall of man, when Adam and Eve did what they did, uh, everything that we see going on now has been going on. But now I think it's just more, well, not think, I know it's just more out there. And it's more in your face, and it's movies, music. There's just, uh, well, it's basically, what is that, the second Timothy thing where good is bad, bad is good,
Yeah. Yeah.
up is down, you know.
Well, and I think that's why
It,
so many people think it now,
yeah.
because you
Yeah.
see this and then you see the things like what, there was one guy I was listening to, his name was Billy Crone, and he kind of went into what, you know, Biden and Harris, and we're going to get a little political for a minute. So y'all just relax. I know how sensitive y'all are, but he had points. So Klaus Schwab is a complete. So I don't know if you know this about Klaus Schwab. I don't know how much you actually know about Klaus Schwab, but his father was a disciple of Adolf Hitler.
Oh,
Don't know if you knew that. So he kind of hates America. He kind of hates the
most
Jewish,
people do.
kind of hates the Jewish people, right? So, but anyway, the way it's going is he's got Biden, who's an incompetent idiot, and we've shown that. But there was an interview that he showed to where Klaus Schwab was on a stage and he said, he's one of the best workers that he had on his team. He's always
Right.
loyal. He's always there. So Biden wasn't a Biden's wasn't always in the mental capacity that he is now. Biden was very well, we're not going to get into that. But since he is incapacitated, Harris comes in, and if Harris gets in, it's basically Harris's job to finish the job. What is the job? The job is okay. So the government basically wants to control everything. This is what Klaus
Mhm.
Schwab wants. They want to control you financially, want to control where you can go, want to control what you say. I don't know if you guys know this, but China has what you call a social credit score. What's a social credit score? Well, if you say something bad about the government, they'll knock down your score and they'll say, oh, you can't fly here now. Oh, you can't drive here now. Oh, you can't go here now. It's complete and utter government control. So I think this is kind of what Klaus Schwab wants for America, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing. When you hear about all this stuff, it's like, it kind of gets you thinking, and it gets you like, okay, when we get to a cashless society where currency is completely digital and they have access to everything, and you get to one of these 15-minute cities. A 15-minute city is, well, you can't go 15 minutes from where you live. You have to stay basically in this area of where you are. You can't go 15 minutes. Like mom and dad wouldn't be able to come see me. I wouldn't be able to go see you guys. That kind of thing. They want electric cars because, well, What's in an electric car? Well, there's computers. They can shut it down. If you're driving too much and they think you're polluting the environment, they can shut it down. So, he points out all these things, and you're like, I think that's why people start to get looking at the skies a little more because,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
a lot of it, there's my spiel, but a lot of it,
No.
a lot of it adds up. Does
Well, it
that
does,
mean it's
and
now? No, I don't know. I don't know.
well, right, and I would make 2 points. Number one, what you're talking about is globalists.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. That's
Exactly.
what you call the New World Order,
Mhm.
Book of Revelation, like you're talking about. Um, and one world government, essentially,
Right.
is what that is. Because, yeah, this stuff is all called out. Absolutely. Then you have something
Well,
called the
one
mark of
other
the.
thing I forgot to mention. Sorry, one other thing I forgot to mention. So how America is not addressed in the Bible, right?
Correct. It is not in
Okay.
the Bible.
Want to know why? So the reason why would be that North America, Canada, America, New Mexico, they want to combine it all into one. So it would be, the Republic of North America, whatever the hell they're going to call
Hmm.
it. So essentially, there is no more United States. There's just North America.
Something else.
Something else, right? But then
Right.
you would adopt, you would adopt all the horrible things from Trudeau, all the horrible things from Mexico, and whatever we're doing, and it would basically be a one dictatorship for North America. You know,
Right. Because over time, what ends up happening as far as a one world government is it all leads up to what's called the mark of the beast,
right?
where in order to get food or get bread or get this or get that, you have to take the mark of the beast, aka the beast being the devil himself, and you take his mark, and
Right.
you basically are well, you're going with him essentially. And if you take that mark, you're toast. But
Yes.
yeah, that's called out. Like, and I think it's good to be aware and have and seek out that understanding. But I think it's also, you always want to be careful to not drive yourself nuts looking. God talks about signs and wonders, right? He says to be aware of them, but not. There are people that, man, they go crazy with it, where it's just like, oh, that's a sign, and
Oh yeah.
they're essentially idolizing.
Man,
Not saying you, but they're idolizing those. Everything's a sign. Everything's a wonder. Rumors
don't
of
go on
wars.
YouTube. Don't
Wars
go
have been
on
going on
YouTube.
for thousands of years. you know, it's
YouTube's horrible for that. Every
well, it
person that
is.
claims to be says not only that, but they're going to tell you every single reason you're going to hell, and basically, you're going to not feel like you're
Well,
ever going to,
yeah,
you know,
it's to get clicks, man. It's just it's
you got to be
there
careful what you
has to
watch.
be
Yeah.
the context and the discernment, and anyone who claims to understand every last thing about the Bible, there's just no way.
Right.
God's infinite. I mean, I know exactly what God's no.
No.
There are promises we know, it's black and white. Okay,
No.
but people always say, well, and God says this too, like, okay, yeah, be ready for Christ's return. But here's the thing: people need to be right with God, like now, because you might kick the bucket tomorrow, and Christ might not return for 1,000
That's
years.
why
Like,
they say
so
that.
you're sitting there worried about something that may or may not happen in your lifetime, but it's like,
Right.
what about right now? And so that's kind of where I go. It's like, yes, you have all that in your mind, but tomorrow's not guaranteed either.
Right. Exactly.
Um, so it's obviously very fascinating, and I know we'll do another episode here where we really dive into a lot of this, and I would like to, because I think it's important. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We need to do that. It's going to take a little more planning, so we
yeah,
don't
oh yeah, you
sound
never want
so
to go off the cuff and be like, well, I
yeah.
think, yeah.
I think I don't know anything. I just have a stupid
But
YouTube channel like everybody else.
yeah, well, what I think another point I want to make, it's a little aside from Revelation, is but in line with my point earlier, is people talk, they want to, that don't have understanding with like Christianity, they think we're just a slave to all these rules that God gives, and you're just a slave to this. It's like blah blah blah. It's like you're just under control of God. It's like, no, that's not actually it. Here's what people don't understand. when they talk about slavery, and
Yeah.
not in like the physical context of like, you know, owning a slave, but like you can be completely free in the world, but you're a complete slave at the same time. The slavery is the slave to sin,
Hmm.
not, oh, I got to follow God's rules again. That's not it. That's not it. Christ already took care of all that. He's trying to get you free from your sin, the stuff that people gravitate towards in the world because they think that's the answer. That's the fun. That's the good stuff. You know, getting hammered every week, sleeping around, looking at pornography, trash. That's not. That's where you're a slave.
Right. Right.
You're Christ is freeing you from that slavery. You're coming to him for freedom. America isn't free. Christ is freedom.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think that churches explain that well enough. And I'm sorry to kind of go off here. I just had the thought. It's like the slavery is the sin you're in.
Yeah.
You know, your own anger that causes you to scream and curse at everybody, or your envy of people, or our jealousy of people, or our bitterness, or our unforgiveness. That's the slavery.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can walk and go to Walmart. You can go wherever you want. That's not the real freedom. You know,
Well, and I think
oh,
what people don't understand too is like when you finally do make the decision to follow Jesus and stuff, you don't really, I mean, you're going to have slip ups, right?
of
You're going to,
course.
everybody's got slip ups, but you don't have this thing like, oh man, I can't go kill anybody today. Oh man, I can't go rob that old lady and beat the shit out of her today. I can't sit there and cuss out my wife and tell her she's useless. I can't do, damn it, I can't do any of
Darn
these
it.
things. You won't want to do that.
Right.
You
Well,
you
you
will
don't want to be
never have
selfish.
it. Right, right.
You don't
And
want to do
well,
anything that is self-centered, that is prideful. You make
exactly.
life about God, number one, and then number two, you make it about other people.
That's a great point because I heard a guy on Reels that pointed out something amazing. I'm going to use abortion for a second here. So he said, Jesus sacrificed himself for us. So he sacrificed, the Father sacrificed for his children. Now, Satan is like the greatest plagiarist of all time. So what does Satan convince you to do? Sacrifice the actual opposite. Sacrifice your children for
For
yourself.
yourself.
See, and that
Right.
is the selfishness.
So that's good.
The point is that if you're with Jesus and you're with God, you will not be selfish to where you want to go kill somebody. You want to go beat up that old lady. You want to tell do all these things. But if you are on the other side, it's all about you. That's why I still say the religion of self is the worst thing going right now because it's worse than atheists. It's worse than Satanists. At least they believe in something. But the
Well, they
self.
can still do good things, of course.
Right. But the
You
religion
know.
of self means screw everybody else. It's all
Right.
about me. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, what anybody says. I'm not going to follow your rules because it's all about me. That's like the most toxic, horrible thing you can do.
Well, it is because you're elevating yourself above other people, and
Right.
what those people don't think about is like, well, what makes how and why and what makes you more important than anybody,
Right.
whether
Right.
no matter their faith or their beliefs, their political side of the aisle, irrelevant. No person's more important than the next because, well, I sinned less than that guy, or I didn't do that, or oh, that guy vote for Donald Trump, he's beneath me. It's like, or whatever it is, like that's insanity. That is exactly why Satan was kicked out of heaven because he thought he was either equal or above
Hmm.
God. And it's
Right.
like, and what I don't understand is how do people come at, it's our sin, it's our fallen, sinful human nature that is rooted in pride, where it's just self. It's that self
Yeah.
valuing. It's the selfish ambitions. It's the get what I want at any cost. But they don't think of the Bible verse like do unto others as you'd have them do to you. It's like they don't have a lot of people. They don't have the like like compassion or the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes. And we all do it. And it's like when you really
Yeah.
think about it, how irrational it is.
Yeah.
what makes one person more valuable than the next? I mean, I'd love to hear.
Well, the thing
Like
is, we're
it's
all created in the image of God. We're all
correct,
created in
correct.
the same exact way. And when you get some, I gotta have this my man, he better have making seven figures, you know, he better have six pack of abs, he better do all this. And it's
Six
like,
foot five.
who are you? Who are
But
you?
that's just it.
Who are you?
Well,
You're
and
no one.
right. Well,
Yeah.
and the worst things is when Christians do that because the entire idea of Christianity is to humble yourself as Christ did,
Mhm.
right? The entire idea is to be humble and say you need God and you accept God. So when they're putting themselves on a pedestal and talking down to
Right.
others
That's fine.
and saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're a sinner, you're horrible," or this, or that's like, wait, you're not getting it,
Right.
So
Right.
it's geez.
That's true. It's true. We could go on about this all night, but we
Well,
won't.
sure.
So, did we answer the question? Is Terrifier 3 demonic? Yeah, probably. But you know what?
But
There's a
so is
lot of
basically everything
so is
else.
basically everything else. So I think the thing is to just watch what you're intaking, watch what you're doing. Definitely don't show your kids this kind of crap. Don't do that. That would be bad. But also, don't just watch yourself. I think the biggest thing is just be mindful what you're intaking. The amount of garbage that's on this thing right now, um, through the roof, and it's so
There's
easily accessible. Everything is in the palm of your hand. It's not like when Dan and I grew up in the 80s where you wanted to look at a dirty magazine, you had to go through the embarrassment of asking the gas station clerk for it. So, that nobody wants to do that.
no.
You have your friend at Arby's do it for you or something.
That should tell you what you're doing is probably wrong. If
Right,
you're not
right,
willing to share it with the world, you should probably be like,
right, right.
probably bad. Yeah.
So yeah, just watch yourselves, guys. We're not here to pass on any judgment. Obviously, we're just here to hopefully um give information if you didn't know it, because Dan and I look at the same things and a lot of the same things, and we read the Bible in the same way and that sort of thing. So are we experts? Hell no, not even close. But we've gone through enough life experiences and stuff to where we have seen what we've done and our faults in the past and how we corrected it. And I think that's just kind of what we want to portray.
Oh, sure. It's
Yeah.
best to share your own shortcomings and sins with other people and use that as the example because it's telling people, wow, he's not looking down on me. It's like, oh no, he's all messed up or was messed up and now he's admitting it and he's just using his experience as the example. And
Right.
I
Right.
really learned that from Pastor Mark down in Colorado
Yeah.
Springs. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we noticed that immediately, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
he's willing to talk about his own shortcomings, his families, and that gets you to listen.
Yeah.
you know,
And some people don't want to listen. Some people, I did a video a couple weeks ago, that had to do with what's behind me. And if that can be a sin or not, and it can be. And I clearly stated that I've gone through this. Yet some people wanted to tell me I was giving sermons. So y'all can take it how you want.
well,
But I will always put myself, because I will always talk about something that I've always been through. It's nothing. I'm not sitting here high and mighty on my high horse, and neither is Dan, to where it's like, okay, we're looking down on you. It's that's never the intention. The intention is basically help every time. If you guys are dealing with something and you want somebody that's gone through it and how they got out of it to maybe help you, that's why we talk about the things we talk about.
absolutely, you have to um, you have to share your experiences and to try to help other people.
Mhm.
And we're under control how we present and what we say, but we're not in control how it's received or if
Right,
it's
right,
received.
right.
So
Yeah. But this is a calling. Once again, the whole point of the show really is a calling. God calls us to spread the word, to help where we can, to offer new things. If not everybody wants to go, you know, s- not everybody wants to listen to us. Not everybody wants to go and talk to their pastor. Not everybody wants to go and talk to a counselor. You got to do it the way you feel comfortable with it. If we help just one person, it's worth it to us.
Well, yeah, and we just kind of hope and pray that people are they have an open mind and a soft heart to it, because yeah, it's easy to find offense in anything if that's what you're looking for, but you
That's why we got
know,
the tagline we got. If you're offended, it's your fault.
and that goes for all of us. Like I
Yeah.
used to get offended about everything. Like, and anytime someone tried to help me years ago, I would get mad or this or that. It's like,
Yeah.
well, now it's like, oh, I'm glad they said that. Even
Uh, Consider that
maybe
someone's
thought at
taken
the
the
time
time
that,
out of their day to see that you have, you we'll just do one more thing real quick here. But you work at that haunted house, and you've been telling me that you've helped a lot of people through that, and you really feel like that's a calling.
oh yeah, well, so the thing with that is I could tell a lot of Christians that, oh, I work at a house, and they'll right then and there,
Right.
how
Right.
can you be out there? That is terrible. That is evil. That's Satan's holiday. That's Satan's day. That's Satan's damn month. That's Satan's pumpkin. Like, that's Satan's baby Ruth candy bar. Like, no, it's no. Satan don't own squat, number one. But what I would say is
You want to come live in the South with me because you got the accent down.
yeah. I don't know why that accent that it went that direction, but um, that is my point in a lot of this is like the lack of discernment. Number one, the lack of listening, and it's an assumption. That's the judgment that God says not to do. We judge all things. There is righteous judgment. Then there's judgment that's just like, oh, this guy's never going to acknowledge his own mess ups. He's just going to condemn everyone else for theirs.
Right.
But the reason I still work in the haunted house industry is because I know the haunted house industry so well, and I know generally, not always, I know generally the type of hurt and the type of heartache within the people that work there bring. I know the type of brokenness that's there. I could have gone one or two ways. I could say, well, I'm getting out of that for my own sake, which would be the selfish thing to do based on this situation. Or I can say, you know what? I trust God. I I know exactly what I can do. I know the gifts He's given me. Maybe this is a great outreach to maybe try and help people, because frankly,
Mhm.
no one else is doing it.
Right.
Nobody else, because I was condemned by people in Colorado Springs in the church because I didn't volunteer at the church building.
Mhm.
Oh, you need to be here. Tell me where I need to try to spread the gospel and try to help people. What about people outside of that?
Right.
Do they not matter? Last I checked, God said, "Go to all nations, preach the
Well,
gospel."
that's the spot
You
where they
know,
need it the most. You don't really need it in the church. Those people are already there.
yeah,
You
and that's
you need it
exactly,
outside the church.
and that's not saying that people not answering are they're horrible people or they're so broken. No, that's not it at all. We all need support and help, and it's like most of these young people, they just have a broken family, or they have no one that encourages them. They have no one
Mhm.
that, like our parents did. They don't, they encourage us. They were always there. These people don't have that.
Right.
Like I had to talk to this young 16-year-old kid the other day, and it was one of the hardest things. I was being that kid's father figure at the time. I had to talk to him, and the kid's crying and all this and stuff. And I literally prayed over him, and it's like I'm listening to this poor kid for hours, and I'm just thinking like, holy crap! And he's in
Yeah.
therapy, and he's getting picked on at school, and it's like, thank God I had the ability just to at least in that moment be there for him, because I don't know what his home life is like. Obviously, it's not very good, but there's so many examples of that. And it's like, I don't care about haunted houses really anymore, but I know that there's a need for someone out there that can maybe listen or help some of these young people, because frankly,
Mhm.
most of them need it, as we all do at some time. But it's like to just put a blanket Satan and condemn these people because, oh, you work at haunted house, you're terrible. That's so awful to me. And I
Yeah.
think it's so evil, because I get treated better out there than I have in most churches, if I'm being honest. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
So that's where people need to stop and think for a minute. Like,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
it's yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
No. Good on you for doing that, man. I'm glad you're doing that. It took a while, but that God's placed you there. Like you said, it's not that you're really caring about haunted houses, it's more about the people and the people that trust you. They're obviously there's a reason they trust you. I mean, I know why, but you
Well,
know,
there's so many non-Christians out there that they know I'm a Christian, but boy, we get along splendidly, and they have respect for me.
and you
And
got to give them credit too, because they're not like,
absolutely,
others can be where they just
they're not condemning me.
they're condemning you, so that's good on them too, that they're willing to talk with you and willing
Yeah,
to get a different, because they're probably a lot of what they're being fed into is probably through the same thing they are. It's the non-Christian way.
right.
So they're looking for a different avenue. They're looking for a different, a different type of way of living and thinking. So that's why they go to you. So,
Yeah, and
good stuff,
that's
man.
that's a gift that God can give, like where people will seek you out and they'll spill their guts. Like
Mm,
it's nothing that I've done. It's just one thing that I'm gifted with, and when you realize that, you can use, like when we did our haunted house and other stuff, like our intent was so different. Well, now it's like, oh, I'm still in the industry, but my intent has nothing to do with me. It's like I know why I'm here, and it's completely polar opposite reasons. Like,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
cool to me. So
Yeah. That is cool. That is cool, man. Yep. All right. Well, let's wrap it up again. For all you guys that watch, thanks for watching. I don't know if we're going to be on next week. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's up to
I don't
him.
see why not per se. I thought this was actually really good because
That was good. That was
it's
good.
well, it naturally goes into whatever.
Well,
You know.
yeah. I mean, this could have been a 2-second show. Could have been just like a yes or no
Well,
question,
the
and
screen's
that's
like,
it.
oh, is this demonic? Like, yes, and we're done.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, cut.
that's not
We're
beneficial
done.
to anybody.
The thing, the best way. That's another thing that I like about it is the best way to look at something is to really break it down. Use other examples with it, use other experiences with it, talk about, when you're dealing with stuff like this and the demonic stuff, you got to bring religion, you got to bring, not religion, don't do that, you got to bring God into it, and that sort of thing. So nah, I'm with you. It's
Yeah,
always good. Yep. So
yeah.
all right, guys, well, we will see you guys hopefully next week with an all new topic. I appreciate everybody checking it out. You guys have a good night.